Hi, everybody. Welcome to the August 26, 2016 edition of Colorado Inside Out. I'm your host, Dominic Dizzuti. Thank you very much for joining us. Let's get a quick take on the closing of the iconic Patsy's Inn Italian restaurant on Navajo Street this week. Denver's oldest Italian eatery surprised restaurant goers when they arrived at the 95-year-old business for lunch on Tuesday. Eric Sonderman, political analyst. I have to admit, this hit me personally. This was one of the last bastions left in what I think has been known for a long time as an Italian part of town. But at this point, except for Mark Carmel Church, it's hard to pick out why. What was your reaction with the news?
Well, my first reaction is it feels weird to be sitting here. You talk about the iconic Patsy's. I'm trying to sit in the iconic Patty's seat, so we'll do the best we can here today. No, it took me by surprise as well. I was always more of a Pagliacci's guy down the street from Patsy's than a Patsy's guy, and I mourned that closing, I don't know, 3 years ago or something like that. It is a piece of Denver history that has gone away, is withering away. We have plenty of restaurants serving kale and arugula, and I'm sure it will be replaced by one more kale and arugula joint, but something is being lost here.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to any more street tacos at this point. John Andrews joins us, former state Senate president and a longtime part of our program Head On here on Channel 12. Thank you for being part of the show today. When we lose these kind of iconic restaurants, whether they're an Italian part of town or an Italian restaurant or any other ethnicity, we lose some of part of Denver's legacy, don't we?
Yeah, we do, and I missed ever eating at Patsy's, Dominic, so an era has closed and I didn't participate in it. I had that similar experience of going up to the Power restaurant in the Denver Tech Center, Cool River Cafe at Bellevue and 25 for a lunch date the other day. Pulled on the door and it was locked, and apparently they were closed down for not paying their rent. So time moves on. I can't buy my hardware at Hugh M. Woods or my skis at Gart Brothers anymore.
Hugh M. Woods, I have not heard that for a long time. That's a good reference. John Bowman joins us, journalist with 5 Points News and longtime contributor to Denver media. When we see losses like Patsy's Inn, I mean, we've seen this in other neighborhoods. That doesn't just happen in North Denver. It's happened here in our 5 Points neighborhood where the station's located. What happens to Denver when we lose iconic places like this?
Well, I think for one thing, you know, the people that used to make those places what they were and the food that came out of them, that's what's going to be missed. You know, the camaraderie that you got going to those places. I mean, where else would you get to see those pictures of the huge giant boxer on the wall over the bar and things like that, you know? But Patsy's was just one of those places that made North Denver, you know, because it was just North Denver at the time. And so I think what I'm going to miss the most is obviously the ravioli and all the good food that they did, but that garlic loaf bread wrapped in the aluminum foil that you could take home. It was amazing. And so after 95 years, I guess it was time, you know, to pull the plug and make a little bit of money and do some retiring.
Yeah. Justine Sandoval rounds out our panel, political activist. Justine, you and I share a legacy in this neighborhood with family members and everything else. The floor is yours, your reaction when you heard the news this week.
I have to hold back tears. Like, as a North Side girl, born and raised in Northwest Denver, I'm not surprised. I know there's been some talk with the owners for a while now about things, and you have to understand that they want to retire, but it still doesn't hurt any less every time we lose one of these iconic places, especially in Northwest Denver. I didn't think I could survive after the Subway closed down, best pizza in Denver, and now Patsy's gone. So it's hard. It's really hard as a Denver native and as someone who grew up in the North Side with my Italian and Irish and Mexican friends in the neighborhood to see a lot of these places close down. But I mean, what can you do? You know, times change, and you know, people need to retire as well, and the neighborhood keeps changing, and it's heartbreaking. But I think as long as Chubby's stays open on 38th, I'll be all right.
It's the last anchor.
Yeah,
I know what you mean.
Chubby's and the bakery on 32nd Rosellas's. As long as those are around, then we'll be all right. If not, it might really go down for me then.
Exactly. And for all the Patsy's fans out there, Street Levels are a magazine program you've seen every Tuesday at 7 o'clock. Our 4th season starts in September, and we did, before we knew all this news, we did a whole special on Navajo Street that will broadcast on September 20th at 7 p.m., and we feature a story about Patsy Zinn. So we didn't mean for it to be an obituary at this point, but it's certainly a good story to relive why it was such an iconic place.
No cause and effect, though.
Yes, no cause and effect. It was not a street-level curse. It was not our fault, we promise. Let's get to the show. An Associated Press investigation has revealed the Clinton Foundation received at least $156 million in private donations resulting from meetings with the presidential hopeful during her time as Secretary of State. Donald Trump responded by comparing the email fiasco to Watergate, but was also embroiled in accusations on flip-flopping on his own immigration policy. Meanwhile, both Gary Johnson and Jill Stein are polling well here in Colorado. Eric, the news back and forth we hear from both the Clinton campaign and the Trump campaign, neither candidate is doing themselves any favors. But is that going to translate, do you think, to more support for third-party candidates?
We'll see. Third-party candidates historically, with some exceptions, or Ross Perot or whatever, but historically they have waned as Election Day draws closer and people focus on the viable choice. The way you phrased the question, Dominic, I mean, Hillary Clinton embroiled in one more corruption scandal, one more corruption escapade, and Donald Trump embroiled in one more controversy, and you sort of say, where's the news value in that? It's just another day at the office. First of all, this was an Associated Press report. This is not Breitbart. This is not Drudge. This is not right-wing media. This is the Associated Press. So I think you take it much more seriously. Just the numbers themselves, I mean, more than 50% of the people that Hillary Clinton was meeting with during that point in time were major donors to the foundation. What we are doing in this country is we are defining, just like we've defined deviancy down, we are now defining corruption down. And so many Hillary defenders and apologists are trying to make the case that, well, it wasn't this. No one has been able to prove a direct link between a government action and a meeting. But we continue to excuse what is inexcusable. We continue to define corruption down. If there was a viable alternative, I know my friend who will go next here is on board the Trump train. He has a stronger stomach than most. If there was a viable alternative, that viable alternative would be leading these polls by 5 points or more right now, because this country, Hillary Clinton represents everything about insider politics that the public hates these days. This country is not clamoring to elect her president, but there is no viable alternative. And Democrats some are being forced to hold their nose and cast this vote, but too many for my taste who grew up in the reform movement of the Democratic Party are somehow making peace with this person who represents everything they used to be against.
John, when you look at these, both the campaigns, it's almost as if they would have an advantage if they were able to be quiet for a week. I mean, you actually saw Hillary Clinton would have even had a worse, maybe not a worse week, but a bad week the week before. But Donald Trump still had the news cycle talking about him, and that story went away. So when you look at these issues, and specifically the immigration point with Donald Trump, that's a big issue, not only for his followers, but I think in Colorado and the rest of the nation. Is there flip-flopping there that's going to be a problem, or is this kind of part of the progress that is a presidential campaign?
I've been around presidential politics since I was a high school page at Nixon's convention in 1960, Dominic. I've seen a lot of them come and go. I've won them and lost them. I cannot think of a flip-flop, a significant pivot on policy that has ever turned a race. Maybe others on the panel have a clearer memory on that than I do, but this will be something that Trump will ride out as he adjusts really to his broader political benefit, his harsh line on let's deport them all. We don't know exactly where he's going to come down. What we do know is that those of us who are very concerned that America needs more secure borders and more respect for the law by those that want to come here and enjoy the American dream, their choice is Donald Trump, not Hillary Clinton. That's quite clear. I just have to differ with you, Eric. Trump is a very viable alternative after all the mistakes that he's made, all the bias that lots of the media, not all of them, have shown to cover for Hillary and cheerlead for Hillary. Trump is still within 4, 5, 6 points on the average of the polls, and it's very early. It's not yet Labor Day when Americans who have a life, unlike some of us who do politics all the time, only start paying attention to politics in September into October. There's lots of time here. I see Hillary Clinton riding high, but like the Titanic, sailing into perilous waters because WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, more revelations by court order from Congress about her perjury, they could really sink her ship.
John, as we look at the campaigns right now, I mean, John makes a good point about it being August, and there's still a long way between now and the finish line. How many of these email stories of one shape or another can the Clinton campaign endure, or at least count on Donald Trump of making a bigger noise that week of distracting?
Emails, shemales. I'm almost sick of it. I feel like Bernie Sanders about this. It's like, when will this stop? I mean, they had 11 investigations, 13 investigations. They spent millions and millions of taxpayer dollars trying to find anything that they could on this first round of emails. Now we come back with a second wave of emails or invites or whatever they may have been over her email. And as John indicates, the WikiLeaks, if as expected, that could be very bad. But at the same time, Donald Trump, I mean, this is a guy who marries a Russian communist woman. The Republican Party is all about family values. How many wives has he had? How many kids does he have by different wives? Where are the family values that he is adhering to relative to the Republican Party's Big Tent? Well, his tent is bigger than ever, I guess. But the bottom line is, I just don't understand either one of these candidates very well. I'm leaning toward Hillary just because of the fact that she is politics. Donald Trump would have us at war, and how long after he got in office? Would it be a week? Would it be 2?
Justine, when we see a campaign like this one, which I can't think, I agree with John Andrews' point here about we haven't seen anything like this for a long time. Well, actually, your point was actually about a flip-flop not ruining campaigns. I don't want to put the wrong words in your mouth there, John. But I don't think.
Read my mind.
Yeah. Okay. There's a lot of folks who have not seen a campaign like this one. Is it going to be about both candidates trying to get into November with just a little bit less collateral damage than the other person?
It's hard for me. Personally, I think that there isn't as much we have Hillary's emails, and there's, to me, has been a witch hunt through these emails trying to find something that really can take her down. But compared to Trump, I don't think that she's taking on the same amount of collateral damage. Sure, there's this whole idea of moving away from a candidate like Hillary Clinton, this insider, this party person. It seems like there's a lot of noise on both sides for an outsider to come in and change the way things work in Washington. But really, when it comes down to it, Hillary Clinton has a track record that really shows that she can push progress forward that people really want. And maybe it's not out front progress and right away, but it has been, sustainable progress, pragmatic solutions to things that are moving forward. Trump is just like this mess at this point. I feel like a lot of the stuff coming out of that campaign, like it's just messing with us almost. Like, I start with the taco bowl. To me, I was like, this can't be real. Like, that has to be a joke. He's just messing with us. And now we just keep going on, and it's, event after event, gaffe after gaffe, and it doesn't seem to be any control over Trump. To me, I think that he has a harder time going into November trying to sustain himself as a viable candidate than she does. And honestly, I mean, when you really look at Trump now, he's starting to kind of realize he has to move towards the middle now. And I don't think that's going to go over well with a lot of the other side that was really loud and vocal supporting him in the primary.
Denver Mayor Michael Hancock is on the lookout for a new chief of staff following the sudden departure of Janice Sinden, who was recently named the president and CEO of the Denver Center for the Performing Arts. Additionally, the city council officially approved 2 separate settlements to former city employees this week, totaling $880,000. It's not a typo, $880,000. John, we're going to start with you on this one. Denver has a system of government where it's a strong mayor system, which gives the mayor a lot of power in lieu of having like a city manager. So a chief of staff to a mayor is pretty important. Is this a big loss for Hancock?
First of all, hat tip to Janice Sinden. I knew her as she was a young lobbyist around the legislature when I was serving there 15 years ago. Honestly, I didn't spot her for the remarkable talent that she has proved to be. But the Denver Center for the Performing Arts is very fortunate to get Janice's leadership. I thought it amusing that she told the Denver Post that as Hancock received the news of her decision to leave, that he was, quote, in her words, very sad and very heartbroken. Maybe a little bit too much self-congratulation there on Janice's part. But I would say that talented staffers, capable managers under the elected public official, be it the mayor, be it the governor, that's a commodity. Hancock is going to be able to find the right person. The bigger picture for me is I lament one-party monopolies, and I would lament it equally if my party, the Republicans, had a monopoly anywhere. But I think one of the things that's dysfunctional in Denver and a lot of other big cities is that for many, many years, one political party has had it all to themselves. It leads to the kind of abuses that are reflected in the Shapiro and McDonald financial settlements, to their grievances that were filed in court. And frankly, it leads to too many eggs in the basket of who will be the mayor's next chief of staff.
John, when you look at the current staff that Mayor Hancock has under his employ, do you think he has somebody in-house that he's going to tap for his next chief of staff, or does he need to look outside?
That's going to be one of those questions that I'm sure he has to answer necessarily. I'm sure there are plenty of talented people in the administration, but at one point I think he needs to bring in somebody who's going to rein in all of these huge settlements that most of them resulting from police misconduct of some sort. Now, the cops are never charged or never found guilty of anything, but yet and still people are getting millions and millions of dollars for their actions. So somebody has to come in and figure out how to, we got a new police chief, we got a new sheriff. Somebody needs to rein in their departments and say, look, the city is going to go frickin' broke if you keep on beating and killing people and having to pay these huge settlements. The bottom line for me, I guess, is Wayne McDonald. I mean, he's been out of work for what is this now? 6 years, and so the bottom line is he just got his $200,000 hush money settlement for not blowing the whistle on all that foolishness that was going on with the Sugar House. Now, don't forget about all of that. That's how Mayor Hancock rode into office, on the heels of the Sugar House scandal. Where's Peter Boyles?
Yeah, we don't want to listen to exactly a talk radio show, but let's keep it rolling. Justine, as we're looking at the last 2.5-ish years of Mayor Hancock's second term. This is where a legacy really can be shaped. There are a lot of projects on the horizon. There's a lot of issues to deal with. This next chief of staff is going to have a great deal to say if it's successful in this next 2.5 years. Do you think he looks in-house or out-of-house?
I think, well, first of all, congratulations to Janice, because as a huge advocate of the arts, that sounds like a dream job that she is going into, so that's pretty amazing. But these types of stories and payouts that are coming from the mayor's office really speak to a lot of the nepotism, I think, going on within the mayor's office, and a lot of inside stuff that we don't know about. I mean, these payouts are coming out of the mayor's office, and it really makes us question what's going on. I originally was a very avid supporter of Mayor Hancock, but now looking at these terms and his legacy, I really start to question a lot of these payouts, a lot of the police brutality issues, the housing issues in Denver, and wonder really what's going on in the mayor's office.
Eric, you had some great comments about this in the Denver Post as they asked you about this story. As you look at it now and to Mayor Hancock's future, what kind of voice does he need at his side for the remainder of his term?
Well, let me just start where Justine was and John was. Janice Sinden is a neat, good human being and a real talent. It was a good move by her. It was an even better move by the DCPA, and good wishes to her. The timing of it, as I pointed out in the Post, could not be worse. Hancock is in a particularly rough spot, so the timing was not anything but ideal from a Hancock administration point of view. I have no idea where he's going to go to find a new chief of staff. If I was advising him, which I'm not, I would urge him to look outside. I think this is an administration and a point of time where a fresh voice, a fresh perspective, a fresh lens would serve them well. And I'm hoping he's wise enough to figure that one out for himself. That's not to say he does not have talent in the administration, but some of this is just timing, and I think they could use a new voice in those inner councils. These payouts, just go on. And these were not particular police abuse ones, although the
Correct.
Stuart Shapiro was an end growth of one of those cases. But let's not forget that the Shapiro settlement, $660,000, was not only a check, but it was accompanied by a very rare letter of apology. I mean, profuse apology. That doesn't usually happen. Usually the purpose of a settlement is to avoid the apology or avoid the acknowledgement that you did something wrong. Here it was accompanied by that acknowledgement. Michael Hancock is very fortunate that he is not up for election right now. He got through a re-election a year plus change ago without any opponent to speak of. He would have perhaps had a race in that case. If he was coming on the ballot anytime soon, there is enough accumulated discontent in this city that he would face a race that might not end all that well for him. But 2.5 years is a long time. Let's see if he can right the ship.
Justine, if I called the mayor and recommended you as a right-winger, that would kill your chances, so I'm not going to do it.
That's a nice favor to offer there, John. Let's get a quick take on this one. We're running out of time on the show. Voters will have the chance to alter Colorado's current presidential primary system and potentially triple Colorado's cigarette tax in November, thanks to 3 new initiatives making the 2016 ballot. Meanwhile, the campaign for Amendment T, which would remove slavery as punishment for a crime from the Colorado Constitution, kicked off its campaign this week. John, your quick take on these newest issues to the ballot.
Well, it's a long time overdue to take involuntary servitude and slavery out of the Constitution. I mean, the involuntary servitude, that was for criminal actions. You could be put in a sweatshop or, in a prison factory kind of job or whatever. Some of those jobs which actually give inmates skills and they can come out and use them, but who knows. Bottom line is there's a lot of initiatives, and I would urge everybody to get some inside reading done on them, because if you vote the wrong way on fracking, if you vote the wrong way on a couple of other issues, there are going to be long-term repercussions in the state.
Justine, your quick take maybe on the primaries, where you think that's going to go?
Well, this ballot's going to be very interesting, very long. But I think that two of the big things right now is the open primary versus closed primary, and switching to a primary system. Switching to a primary system is something we previously had a primary before, but now switching back will open up more participation, which I'm in favor of. Although it will cost taxpayers to go ahead and run a primary. What I am against is an open primary in Colorado.
Amen.
And I know as a millennial, it's hard for me to say that because we want to encourage participation, but it's really not that hard to register with the party. You can choose a party. If you're really passionate about a candidate from either party, you can go ahead and do that. And we risk a lot of people who vote during presidential years because they're angry, and we can risk a lot of really bad candidates getting on the ballot. And I think that it's important, especially to minority groups in Colorado, that we keep a closed primary.
Eric, your quick take.
Well, John he started his answer by talking a long time overdue with reference to the, slavery thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, speaking of a long time overdue, how about getting rid of this archaic, antiquated caucus system? We have license plates around the state for really, really old cars, and we call them antiques. Maybe somebody should put that license plate on the whole idea of a caucus system. This initiative is not getting rid of the caucus system for every other office. Right. It's only creating a presidential primary. So it's only a half step. I'm going to take on Justine, and I know Justine comes from the left, John comes from the right. In terms of closed primaries, they're an example. They're good people. I love sharing this panel with them, but they're an example of what's wrong with our political system and why there is such discontent on both the Bernie Sanders left and on the Donald Trump right. The largest group of voters in this state are unaffiliated voters. They deserve to have their voice heard, and I'm one of them. They deserve to be able to participate in this process. They should not be disenfranchised.
Join her
John,
party.
wrap it up for us.
Join her party, join mine if you want to vote in the primary, Eric.
There you go.
First of all, as a 1944 model antique, I resemble that remark. As far as open primaries, Dominic and his colleagues here at Channel 12, Colorado Public Television, would object if someone from Channel 6 or KOA Radio tried to sit in on a decision meeting on how you run your station, likewise to how the Republican and Democratic parties choose their nominees. I expect the closed primary to pass strongly, and I surely support it.
A couple minutes left in the show. Let's get to our favorite part of the show. Usually Miss Calhoun starts us off, but this time it's going to be Mr. Sonderman, your disgrace of the week.
I did this same disgrace with reference to some Denver cops a couple of months ago. My question is, what does it take to get fired as a public employee around here? We have the 2 cops in Commerce City who were out on job duty on public time playing Pokemon Go. They lost a week of pay or something like that. We have the local administrator, the Veterans Administration, a woman named Melanie Murphy, who apparently wasn't showing up for her work for weeks and months at a time. She lost 2 weeks of pay. What does it take to get fired as a public employee?
John.
Hillary and Bill Clinton, the political Bonnie and Clyde of America in our time. Shame on them for putting the U.S. State Department up for sale to the highest bidder and putting it in their own pocket and putting our national security at risk with Hillary's unsecure email system.
John.
Shame on Donald Trump for taking money from China and Russia when he can't get loans from America. No, really. DPS is asking for yet another bond issue. Will DPS please put out a report card on all the bond issues over the last 5 or 6 elections? Tell us what you've done with that money before you ask us for even more.
Justine.
Disgrace. Believe it or not, my disgrace of the week is probably the hardest thing to come up with. But this week, I'm going to disgrace Mike Kaufman for not yet coming out on whether or not he supports Trump. I think it's really time he takes a position, especially as he reaches out to the CD6 community, who has a higher population of immigrants now than ever before, and really say, are you with Trump? Are you against Trump? Especially with his rhetoric against immigration in this country.
Say something nice about somebody rather quickly.
Really quickly, my daughter's alma mater, the University of Chicago, came out with a statement in the last day or two to the incoming class of freshmen about the importance of free speech, free inquiry, getting rid of all this silly idea of safe spaces and microaggressions and trigger warnings. May there be more schools do the same.
John.
Trump campaign manager Kellyanne Conway, a class act in a tough business newly in place as the campaign manager and contributing to breathing new life into this presidential campaign to get America's economy going again and save our country from decline.
Good luck with that.
John.
2 federal court rulings on marijuana. One in Kansas. You will now be able to drive your car with Colorado plates through Kansas and not get arbitrarily pulled over just because you have Colorado plates on them. The courts ruled that was wrong. And in San Francisco, one of the appellate courts out there has also ruled that medical marijuana should not be a charge, a crime, as long as no state laws have been broken.
Justine.
My praise this week will be to Rafael Espinoza and Paul Lopez, city councilmen, for their work that they've done to really safeguard the community from a lot of overdevelopment. Paul's done a lot of work in Westwood to protect the community, and as well as their support of a building moratorium in Denver as we continue to kind of reassess where we are in development and see how we can go forward with thoughtful development in Denver.
That's all the time we had tonight. Thanks for tuning in. For everyone here at Channel 12, I'm Dominic Dizzuti. Thanks very much for watching. Good night.